My son invited me to Thanksgiving, the first family dinner since my wife died. He hugged me, he smiled, he even called me Dad. For one beautiful hour, I thought he wanted his father back. Then, just before dessert, he slid a folder across the table, looked me in the eyes and said, "Dad, I just need one signature." He thought he was about to inherit my home. What he didn't know was that I'd changed my will 3 weeks earlier. And before that Thanksgiving dinner was over, someone was going to leave that table with far less than they came for. My name is Arthur Bennett. I'm 74 years old. For 47 years, the little white house on Willow Creek Road wasn't just my address. It was my life. Every window, every floorboard, every nail had a memory attached to it. My wife, Margaret, and I bought that house when we were 26. We couldn't even afford new furniture. For 6 months, our dining table was nothing more than 2 wooden crates with an old door laid across the top. Margaret used to laugh and say, "One day we'll tell our grandchildren we started with a table that used to be a bedroom door." She made every struggle feel like an adventure. She'd been gone for 11 months. Cancer took her quietly, but the silence it left behind was louder than anything I'd ever known. Every morning, I still found myself making 2 cups of coffee, one for me, one for her, only to pour the second one into the sink. Some habits refused to die. Then, 3 weeks before Thanksgiving, my phone rang. It was my son, Ethan. He rarely called first. "Dad, we were hoping you'd spend Thanksgiving with us." For a second, I couldn't answer. Since Margaret's funeral, family dinners had disappeared. Birthdays became text messages. Sunday visits became excuses. Loneliness has a strange way of becoming normal, until someone suddenly reminds you what you've been missing. Smiled. I'd love that. After hanging up, I walked into Margaret's sewing room. Nothing had moved since the day she passed away. Her glasses still rested beside the sewing machine. Her favorite blue sweater still hung behind the door. I picked it up, held it against my chest, and whispered, "Looks like I'll have somewhere to be this Thanksgiving." For the first time in months, I actually felt excited. I shaved carefully, bought my granddaughter Lily the puzzle she'd been asking for, and spent nearly 4 hours baking Margaret's famous pecan pie. It never tasted as good as hers, but I kept trying anyway, because some traditions are worth protecting. I had no idea someone else had been protecting something too, something I wouldn't discover until dessert was served. I stood there frozen. For a moment, I wondered if I'd heard them wrong. Maybe they weren't talking about my house. Maybe it was someone else's conversation. Then I heard my son's voice, quiet, confident. He won't suspect a thing. My heart sank. I could have turned around. I could have driven home. But instead, I took a deep breath. He knocked on the door and pretended I'd heard nothing. The door flew open. "Dad!" Ethan wrapped his arms around me. For a second, I almost believed the hug was real. Then I remembered what I'd just heard. Behind him stood Claire. She smiled warmly. "Happy Thanksgiving, Arthur." Their daughter, Lily, came running down the hallway. "Grandpa!" She threw her arms around my waist. I hugged her tightly. She was the only person in that house who wanted nothing from me except my love. For the next hour, everything felt almost perfect. The smell of roasted turkey filled the kitchen. Football played quietly on the television. Lily proudly showed me the drawing she'd made at school. At the top she'd written, "Thankful for Grandpa." Smiled. That little piece of paper meant more to me than anyone in that room could imagine. Dinner began. Ethan filled my plate before I could even reach for the potatoes. Claire kept asking if I needed anything. It was too perfect. People don't suddenly become this thoughtful overnight. Not after nearly a year of silence. Something was coming. I could feel it. Halfway through dinner, Claire stood up. "I just want to say something." She raised her glass. "Arthur, you've always worked so hard for this family. We're grateful for everything you've done." Everyone clinked their glasses. Even I smiled. But something inside me whispered, "This isn't the real reason they invited you." Then Lily looked at me and quietly asked, "Grandpa, are you coming back for Christmas too?" Before I could answer, Ethan quickly interrupted, "Of course he is." His smile never moved, but his eyes were fixed on the brown leather folder sitting on the kitchen counter. He kept glancing at it, like a man waiting for the perfect moment. Dessert arrived. I placed Margaret's pecan pie in the middle of the table. Claire cut the first slice. Lily took a bite and smiled. "This tastes just like Grandma's." That one sentence almost broke me. For a few seconds, Margaret felt close again. Then Ethan slowly pushed his chair back, reached for the brown folder, and placed it gently in front of me. He smiled, almost too casually. "Dad, before we have coffee, there's just one small favor I'd like to ask." For a few seconds, no one spoke. The room was so quiet I could hear the grandfather clock in the hallway, ticking, tick, tick, tick. Ethan smiled. "Dad, it's nothing complicated. We've already talked to a lawyer." Claire quickly added, "It's just to make things easier in the future." Easier. I looked down at the papers. The first page clearly read, "Warranty deed." The second, "Transfer of ownership." The third, "My home's legal address." There was no mistake. They weren't planning for the future. They wanted my house today. Slowly looked up at my son. His smile hadn't changed, but suddenly I remembered something Margaret used to say. "Arthur, when someone wants something badly enough, watch their eyes, not their smile." I looked into Ethan's eyes. For the first time in my life, I didn't recognize the man sitting across from me. He leaned forward. "Dad, it's only paperwork. You'll still live there. We're just trying to avoid probate later." Nodded slowly. "I see." Claire slid a pen toward me. "There. Just sign where the yellow tabs are." I picked up the pen. Everyone watched me. Even Lily looked confused. I turned another page, then another. Every signature line already had little yellow stickers waiting for me. They hadn't come hoping. They had come expecting. I quietly placed the pen on the table. Then I smiled. Not an angry smile. Not a sarcastic one, just the kind of smile an old carpenter wears when he already knows how the job will end. Folded my hands together, looked directly at Ethan, and calmly said, "Son, I wish you'd asked me 3 weeks ago." The smile disappeared from his face. "What?" I repeated myself. "I said you're 3 weeks too late." Claire frowned. "I don't understand." Reached inside my coat pocket. pulled out a plain white envelope and gently placed it beside the folder. I met with my attorney 3 weeks ago. Ethan stared at the envelope. His face slowly lost all color. "What did you do?" I looked around the Thanksgiving table. At the turkey, the pie Margaret taught me to bake, my granddaughter, the home filled with laughter that suddenly felt fake. Then I quietly answered, "I changed my will." No one moved. No one even reached for their coffee. Finally, Ethan asked the question I'd been expecting, his voice barely above a whisper. "Who did you leave the house to?" I looked him straight in the eyes and said, "The answer to that question is exactly why I knew you invited me today." No one stopped me, not at first. I picked up the pie, slid it back into the cardboard box, walked toward the front door. Behind me, I heard Ethan's chair scrape across the hardwood floor. "Dad, wait." I didn't, not until I reached the front porch. Cold November air filled my lungs. For the first time that evening, I felt like I could breathe again. The front door opened behind me. "Dad." This time his voice wasn't confident. It sounded afraid. Turned around. He was standing there alone. The smile was gone. "What did you mean when you said you changed your will?" I looked at him for a long moment, then quietly asked, "Ethan, do you know what hurts the most?" He frowned. "I buried your mother less than a year ago. Not once did you ask me, 'Dad, how are you sleeping? Are you eating? Do you need company?' But tonight, the very first serious conversation we've had was about my house." He lowered his eyes. "It's not like that." "No?" I stepped closer. "Then tell me, if I lived in a tiny apartment with no savings, would you still have invited me today?" He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Silence is sometimes the loudest answer. Claire stepped outside. "Arthur, please don't leave angry." I looked at her. "I'm not angry. I'm disappointed. There's a difference." She looked down. For the first time all evening, she seemed uncomfortable, almost guilty. Then something unexpected happened. Little Lily quietly opened the front door. She was still holding the drawing she'd made for me. "Grandpa, did I do something wrong?" My heart shattered. I knelt down. "No, sweetheart. You did everything right." She hugged me tightly, then whispered something so softly only I could hear it. "I heard Mommy tell Daddy, if you didn't sign, Thanksgiving would be a waste." I froze. Slowly I looked up at Ethan. His face turned white. Claire immediately said, "Lily, go inside." But it was too late. The truth had already escaped. I stood up, picked up my pie, and looked at my son one last time, then quietly said, "Your mother used to say a person's true. Character doesn't appear when they're struggling. It appears when they think they're about to gain something." I walked toward my truck, started the engine, and drove away, leaving the Thanksgiving dinner behind. But as I looked in the rearview mirror, I noticed something strange. Ethan wasn't watching me leave. He was arguing with the man in the black Mercedes. They looked panicked. I sat in my truck, staring at the envelope. The handwriting stopped my heart. It belonged to Margaret. I'd seen those gentle, looping letters for nearly 50 years. Slowly I opened it. Inside was a single folded page. At the top she'd written, "My dearest Arthur, swallowed hard. The letter was dated just 6 weeks before she passed away. If you're reading this, then I'm no longer beside you. I wish I could tell you everything in person, but I know you. You'll always believe the best in everyone, especially the people you love. A tear rolled down my cheek. That was Margaret. She always understood me better than I understood myself. I kept reading. Promise me one thing. Never make a decision about our home because you feel guilty, lonely, or pressured. A house can be rebuilt. Trust cannot. I closed my eyes. It felt as if she was sitting beside me again. Then I noticed something else. A second note had been tucked behind the letter. Only one sentence. Go see Mr. Collins. He knows the truth. Mr. Collins. The name sounded familiar. Then I remembered. James Collins, our family attorney, the same man who had handled our will for almost 25 years. Why would Margaret send me to him now? The next morning, I drove straight to his office. The receptionist smiled sadly. Mr. Bennett, he told me if you ever came, to bring you in immediately. My heart started racing. He was expecting me. A few moments later, James Collins walked into the room carrying a thick blue file. He shook my hand. I'm sorry about Margaret. So am I. He looked at me quietly, then asked, Did Ethan ask for the house? I stared at him. How did you know? He slowly opened the blue file. Inside were several documents, along with an envelope sealed in red wax. He gently placed it on the desk. Because Margaret knew this day might come. I felt the room spin. What do you mean? James sighed. Arthur, your wife left very specific instructions. She told me never to open this envelope, unless someone in your family tried to pressure you into giving away the house. I looked at the envelope. Across the front, in Margaret's handwriting, were 7 heartbreaking words. Open only if love becomes conditional. My hands began to shake. Margaret had prepared for this before she died. For a long moment, I couldn't bring myself to touch the envelope. James didn't rush me. He simply sat across the desk, waiting. Finally, I broke the red wax seal. Inside there was another letter and an old photograph. The photograph showed Margaret and me standing in front of our house the day we bought it. We looked so young, so hopeful. On the back, Margaret had written, "The day we promised this house would always be built on love." Smiled through my tears. Then I unfolded the letter. My dearest Arthur, if you're reading this, then someone has asked you for our home instead of asking about your heart. I prayed I would be wrong. I hope I am. I had to stop reading. The words hurt too much. James quietly handed me a glass of water. After a moment I continued. Our house was never meant to be a prize. It was meant to be a place where family felt safe. If anyone ever tries to claim it through guilt, pressure, or entitlement, I want you to remember something. Love is never proven by signatures. A tear landed on the page. Then came the sentence that changed everything. Arthur, 3 months before I died, Ethan came to see me. I looked up at James. What? He nodded slowly. He did. My heart started pounding. I looked back at the letter. He asked me if the house would someday belong to him. I told him only if he remembered that people matter more than property. He smiled, but something in his eyes frightened me. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Margaret had seen it. Months before anyone else. She had noticed a change in our son long before I did. Then I reached the final paragraph. Arthur, if Ethan has truly forgotten who he is, don't punish him with anger. Let life teach him what I no longer can. And whatever you do, don't let anyone make you feel guilty for protecting what we built together. Love always, Margaret. I slowly folded the letter. The room was silent. Finally, I asked the question that had been burning inside me. James, if Margaret knew this might happen, why didn't she tell me? James looked out the window, then quietly replied, because she believed that people deserve the chance to choose the right path on their own. He paused. But Arthur, I'm afraid there's something else you don't know. He opened the blue file again. This time, he removed a document with Ethan's signature across the bottom. I stared at it, confused, until I read the title. Private Loan Agreement. The borrower was Ethan Bennett. The lender was a man named Victor Kane. James quietly closed the file. Arthur, I haven't told you the hardest part yet. I looked at him. What could possibly be worse than this? He slid another document across the desk. This. Picked it up. At first it looked like an ordinary email. Then I noticed the sender, Claire Bennett, my daughter-in-law. The subject line read, Dad will sign on Thanksgiving. I felt my stomach tighten. James spoke softly. Margaret asked me to keep copies of every document related to your estate. When Ethan requested information, he wasn't alone. I kept reading. Claire had written, once the house is transferred, we'll sell it before Christmas. Dad doesn't need a place that big anymore. Another line caught my eye. If we wait until after he changes his mind, we'll lose everything. Lose everything? I looked up. What does that mean? James folded his hands. It means they weren't planning to let you stay there forever. The room fell silent. Stared out the window. 47 years. Every Christmas. Every birthday. Every anniversary with Margaret. Reduced to a number on a real estate listing. Whispered. They'd already planned to sell it. James nodded. I'm afraid so. For the first time that day, I didn't cry. I simply felt empty. After a long silence, I stood up. James, I don't want to fight my son. I don't want lawyers. I don't want court. James smiled gently. I know. Margaret knew that too. He opened a drawer and pulled out one final envelope. This was her last instruction. I looked at the handwriting. It simply said, only after Arthur learns the truth. I opened it. Inside there was only one sentence. Invite them to dinner and let them discover what they chose to lose. I read it again, then again. A slow smile appeared on my face, not because I wanted revenge, but because Margaret already knew exactly how this story should end. Folded the note carefully, put it back into the envelope, looked at James and quietly said, would you help me arrange one last family dinner? James smiled. I was hoping you'd ask. 3 days later, I called Ethan. Son, I've been thinking. There was a long silence. Then he answered, about the house? Smiled to myself. Yes, I think you're right. His voice instantly became lighter. So you'll sign? I'd rather do it properly. I want the whole family together. Sunday, at my house. I'll cook. For a second he didn't say anything. Then he laughed. Of course, Dad. We'll all be there. The moment I hung up, I looked at Margaret's photograph. You are right. People always reveal themselves when they think they've already won. Sunday arrived. For the first time since Margaret's funeral, the house felt alive again. The smell of roast beef filled the kitchen. Her favorite jazz music played softly. Everything looked exactly the way she loved it. At 2:00, the doorbell rang. Ethan, Claire, Lily, and the same attorney I'd seen at Thanksgiving smiled politely. Come in. The attorney extended his hand. Mr. Bennett. Shook it. I hope you're hungry. He looked confused. I thought we were here to sign documents. We are, but no one signs papers before dinner. For the next hour, we ate together. Lily laughed. Claire complimented the food. Ethan kept checking his watch. He wasn't enjoying lunch. He was waiting for my signature. Finally, I stood up, walked to the living room, and returned carrying a small wooden box. Margaret had kept it for years. I placed it in the center of the table. Ethan leaned forward, his eyes filled with excitement. I opened the box. Inside were 2 envelopes. The first was labeled House Documents. The second, Margaret's last letter to her family. I looked around the table, then quietly said, Before anyone talks about this house, there's something your mother wanted all of you to hear. The room fell completely silent. I unfolded Margaret's letter. My hands trembled. Then I began to read. If this letter is being opened, it means our family has reached a crossroads. Claire slowly lowered her eyes. Arthur and I never believed a home could keep a family together. But we always believed greed could tear one apart. No one moved, not even Lily. He continued, If you've gathered today because you love Arthur, then you've already received everything I ever wanted to leave you. I looked toward Ethan. His eyes were wet. Then I read the final paragraph. But if you've gathered because of this house, then you've misunderstood everything Arthur and I spent 47 years trying to build. I gently folded the letter. No one spoke, not even the attorney. Then I picked up the second envelope, the one marked House Documents. I smiled, looked directly at Ethan, and said quietly, Now, let's talk about the house. No one moved. I slowly removed the papers from the envelope. The attorney adjusted his glasses. Ethan leaned forward. Claire gripped the edge of her chair. I placed the first document on the table, then quietly said, These aren't transfer papers. They're the final version of my will. The attorney frowned. This isn't the document I prepared. No, it isn't. I hired someone else. Silence. I looked at Ethan. You came to Thanksgiving believing I'd sign my home away. You never asked me why I bought that house. You never asked what it meant to your mother. You only asked when it would become yours. Ethan lowered his eyes. Dad, I can explain. I gently raised my hand. No. For months I've listened to silence. Tonight you'll listen to me. The room became completely still. I picked up Margaret's wedding photograph from the table. Your mother and I didn't build this house with money. We built it with overtime, cancelled vacations, second jobs, and thousands of ordinary days when we chose family over comfort. I paused, then looked directly at Claire. You called it a house that's too big for one old man. She couldn't even meet my eyes. He continued, You are right. It is too big, but not because I live there alone. It's too big to be filled with people who only see its price. No one spoke. Even Lily looked confused. Then I slid the will across the table. Ethan's hands shook as he opened it. His eyes scanned the first page, then the second. Suddenly he stopped breathing. Dad, this says... I nodded. Read it. His voice cracked. The family home shall not be inherited by any beneficiary. Immediately following my death. Claire looked up. What? Ethan kept reading. The property will remain in a family trust for 10 years. The attorney blinked. I've never seen a clause like this. Smiled. Keep reading. Ethan swallowed hard, his hands trembling now. Any family member who contests this will, pressures me regarding my property, or attempts to influence my decisions for financial gain. He stopped. He couldn't continue. I quietly finished the sentence for him. Will permanently lose every right to inherit any part of my estate. The room went silent. Claire covered her mouth. The attorney slowly looked at me. Mr. Bennett, you planned this? Shook my head. No, I finished it. Margaret started it. I looked at my son's tear-filled eyes, then calmly said, You didn't lose this house today. Ethan, you lost something far more valuable. You lost your mother's trust. The room was silent. Lily walked toward me, holding a small white envelope. Grandpa, Grandma gave this to me. She said only give it to Grandpa when everyone finally tells the truth. My hands began to shake. I looked at the handwriting. It was Margaret's. Carefully opened the envelope. Inside there was only one page. No long speech. No legal instructions. Just a few lines. I read them slowly. My Arthur, if you're reading this, then our family has finally reached the moment I feared most. Please don't let this house become the thing that destroys the people we love. If someone has disappointed you, teach them. Don't destroy them. One day, they'll need forgiveness, far more than they'll ever need a house. And remember, the greatest inheritance we can leave our children isn't property. It's the chance to become better than we were yesterday. Love forever, Margaret. Folded the letter. Looked at Ethan. He wasn't looking at the house anymore. He was crying. Real tears. Not because he'd lost the property, but because he'd finally realized what he'd almost destroyed. Slowly, he stood up, walked across the room, and for the first time in years, he hugged me. Not a polite hug, not a Thanksgiving hug, the kind of hug a little boy gives his father when he knows he's made the biggest mistake of his life. His voice trembled. Dad, I don't deserve your forgiveness. I quietly answered, No, but you're still my son. Claire began crying too. She whispered, I'm sorry. I saw the house before I saw the man who built it. I nodded. Thank you for finally being honest. Then I looked at my attorney. James, would you bring me the will? He handed it over. Everyone watched. Slowly, I picked up a pen. Ethan immediately shook his head. "No, Dad. Please don't change anything because of me." Smiled. "I'm not changing it because of you." I signed one final page, folded the documents, and quietly said, "I'm changing it because your mother was right. People deserve one chance to become who they were meant to be." No one spoke. The only sound in the room was the old grandfather clock. Margaret had bought 23 years earlier. Tick, tick, tick. Ethan slowly wiped his eyes. He looked at the papers one last time, then pushed them back toward me. "No, Dad, I don't want them." I looked at him. "You don't?" He shook his head. "If the only way I can have this house is by losing you, then I don't deserve either." For the first time that day, I believed him, not because of his words, because of what he did next. He stood up, walked to the fireplace, picked up the folder his attorney had brought, opened it, and without saying a word, tore every single transfer document in half. Then again, and again, small pieces of paper floated onto the living room floor. The attorney looked stunned. Claire quietly began crying. Lily smiled. The house suddenly felt like home again. Ethan turned toward me. I spent months worrying about losing money. But today, I almost lost my father. He walked over. This time he didn't ask for forgiveness. He simply wrapped his arms around me and whispered, "I'm coming over every Sunday if you'll still have me." I smiled. I've been waiting a long time to hear that. 6 months later, Sunday dinners had returned, not because anyone had to come, because everyone wanted to. Lily helped me bake pecan pie. Claire planted flowers in Margaret's garden. Ethan fixed the old fence we'd always planned to replace together. Not once did anyone mention the house. One evening, as the sun disappeared behind the maple trees, Ethan sat beside me on the porch. "Dad, I finally paid off every debt. I did it the hard way." Smiled proudly. "I knew you could." He looked at the house, then back at me. "I don't care who owns it anymore. I already got back what I almost threw away." I nodded. "Good. Because that's exactly what your mother hoped you'd learn." 1 year later, I visited James Collins one last time. He smiled. "So, any changes to the will?" I looked out the window, then quietly answered, "Just one. When I'm gone, the house will belong to Ethan. But only because he spent an entire year proving he wanted his father more than my property." James smiled. "I think Margaret would have liked that." I looked at the photograph on his desk. Margaret's smile seemed almost alive. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't taking something away. It's giving someone the chance to become the person they should have been all along, and making them earn it. If my story taught me anything, it's this: never leave your children only an inheritance. Leave them values. Because money can build a house, but only love can build a family. The end.